This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you, your humble host. We have a great show for you this afternoon, but before we get into that, I'd like to thank the Japanese Gardens for their continued support of this particular program. Also, my producer on site, Mr. Tommy Sitt, for his continued support of always being with us every week. We have a very interesting gentleman joining us this afternoon. We have next week, Miss Stephanie Powers will be joining us in this time frame, and so I'm looking forward to that. By the way, you can catch a lot of the shows, upcoming shows, and some of my past shows will be on dbtv.tv on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's a network that goes all around the world, and there may be another network involved before too long, but I'm very excited about that, to be part of what's going on there. My guest this afternoon is a gentleman who you know from his days, his role as Ralph Mouth on Happy Days. His name is Don Most. You can catch all the information about Donnie on RealDonnieMost.com. He's an actor, a singer, a director, a producer. He went from Brooklyn to New York to the Catskills to L.A., and for Donnie, it's been happy days almost ever since. He's a father and a husband to a beautiful woman named Morgan, who we met on the program. We're going to talk about that because that's always fun to talk about how people met. And he also is quite a singer. In January of next year in Denver at Dazzles, he's going to be appearing with the Metropolitan Jazz Orchestra there for an evening. We'll talk about the times and tickets availability and et cetera like that as we move forward. But he sings swing music, standards, as well as everything. And don't forget, he also has a CD out, which we will talk a little bit later about. And we're going to play a little bit of his music as we continue to move forward with the program. So would you please welcome Mr. Don Most?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for that lovely intro. Appreciate it.
No, you're more than welcome, sir. Are there tickets and everything still available for the January 5th show?
Yes, there are. The place is called Dazzle in Denver. I recently, a year ago, a little more than a year ago, my wife and I moved to this area to be close to our daughter, because we knew we were going to be grandparents. So we moved from LA, made the big move, and it was a little tumultuous at the beginning, and I kind of put off the music for a little bit, and I had a couple of films that I was doing, but I got back into it and did my first show since getting here about 2 weeks ago at a place called Nieces near Boulder, Colorado. And it was great. With this band is fantastic, big 17-piece, jazz orchestra, and now Dazzle was one of the, big jazz clubs in Denver. So they immediately got us in the books. So it'll be fun. There are definitely seats left. People could go to I don't know if it's dazzle.com, but if you just look up Dazzle in Denver, you'll find the venue, their website, and on their calendar, they'll be able to find the show and get tickets.
And if you're a friend of Don's on Facebook, you'll get it, because I've been getting it now for about a week to 10 days, I guess. You've been putting it out there, so I've been sharing it with as many people as I possibly can.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, hey, listen, it's my pleasure. Listen, you're on my show. I try to treat you with the utmost respect. I mean, as much as I possibly can. In high school, you started studying singing, dancing, acting. Was show business always the place where you wanted to be, and why? I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I asked the why is because of my training. I trained under Larry King for a number of years in Miami, but why showbiz?
Yeah, it was actually earlier than high school that I started, going and to a separate school, not in high school. As you mentioned, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I would take the subway. It really started when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And I saw the movie The Jolson Story, starring Larry Parks as Al Jolson. And it just had such a huge impact on me. I mean, I was 9 years old and I was watching this movie, and my mom my mom was a teenager in the 40s, so she had some great big band swing albums that I would hear, growing up. And then I saw this movie, The Jolson Story, and I was just so taken with the music, Jolson's talent, because it was his voice, and Larry Parks did this great job with playing Jolson. And I wound up watching that movie. There was something called, I don't know where you're originally from, but in New York, they had something called $1 Million Movie. And
Yes.
It was on our Channel 9, and they would show one movie for the week, and they'd show it twice every night, Monday through Friday, 4 times Saturday, and 4 times Sunday. And after I watched it that first time, I watched it most of the other runs. I must have seen it at least 12 times that week. I mean, I was just so mesmerized and taken. And then I started, getting his albums, and then started listening to WNEW, William B. Williams, who played all the great standards with Sinatra and Nat King Cole and Ella Fitzgerald and all of the greats. And that's when I got a real education, and that I wanted to pursue it. And my parents knew somebody that they had heard about a teacher in New York, a guy named Charlie Lowe. He was a old vaudevillian, and he ran this studio in Manhattan with his wife Kasha. She taught the tap dancing, and he was in charge of more of the singing and acting. And so I was 13, and I would take the subway in to Manhattan every Saturday for those lessons. And what happened was he also produced sort of a review where he handpicked from his students some of the top ones. So he had a group they called the Broadway Show-Offs or something, and he picked me to be in that after I'd been there for about a year. So they got booked. I spent the summer when I was 14, turning 15, performing with this group up in the nightclubs in the Catskill Mountains for the whole summer.
Wow.
So you can imagine I was just turning 15. So it was like, to me, it was a dream, I mean, wow, I made it. So it was a great experience.
Yeah.
But then for various reasons, in the following year, I put it aside, and my focus really shifted to acting in a big way. And I knew I'd want to come back to the music at some point. And I did, I wound up doing plenty of musicals, musical theater, but I knew I'd want to get back to the music one day. And I did. About 10 years ago, I decided to really put together something and take it out and see how it went. And so that's a little bit of the chronology of how the why, how it was like I would go around imitating, singing Jolson for my grandparents and singing Jolson for whoever would listen,
Yeah. I mean, it's almost similar, not similar, but somewhat like me. My mother was an interior decorator, and one day she brought home these First Family albums, the Kennedy family albums.
Oh, yeah.
And I was always keen on people's voices and stuff. And I had an uncle who was a comedian on Miami Beach forever, Tubby Boots, and highly successful. And, he would come over for dinner from time to time when he was in town. And I started mimicking these albums, doing impressions of the Kennedy family and this one and that one. And that's what propelled me into the business. Plus, I saw that in the drama classes in high school and everything, it was always the good looking girls were in there. And of course, I went to Ray Abruzzo, and I both kid about that. We both go wherever the good looking girls are, at the time. And, but yeah, and that's how I kind of got my kick. But in actuality, my first laugh came when I was living in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and I was one of the 3 wise men. And on this wooden stage, I'm a very big guy back then, and I would kneel down, and you'd hear thump, and you'd hear giggling going on in the audience. I went, oh, okay, I like that sound. I like that sound. I really do.
Intoxicating.
It is intoxicating, no matter what you do. The unfortunate part is you have to eventually hit reality, and you either can grow into it, or you don't grow into it, or you find something else you may want to do in life. So, you
Yeah.
know, it is what it is. What did you do after the Catskills and after Brooklyn and everything? When did you make the move? What did you do in New York? Did you do a lot of theater in New York and musical theater and more training before you went out to Los Angeles?
Uh, s- yes, some of that. I I did. I switched to a different school that was much more serious uh, workshop for actors, and in New York. So, because what happened was somewhere around that time, I started. It was a very creative and fervent time for films in the late '60s and early '70s. All there was so many, almost like the studios were doing almost like independent films when you had The Graduate and
Right.
Cool Hand Luke or the Hustler and the Last Picture Show, and then so I started becoming really caught up in that and some of the great actors, Dustin Hoffman and Paul Newman, and then the guy who really I saw Five Easy Pieces, which starred Jack Nicholson. It was his
Mm,
second big film. It was after Easy Rider, but I think it came out before. I can't remember, but I became a huge Nicholson fan, and that's when I enrolled in this school that was really much more serious with the acting and put the music aside. And then through that school, I was able to get a manager, and then she sent me out. Introduced me to a lot of agents, and because I had red hair and that look, they thought I'd be great for commercials.
yeah.
And it was lots, that was the center for commercials in New York.
Yeah.
So I went out and I started booking a lot. I did like 40 commercials in 4 years. And
Wow.
and this is while most of the time it was while I was going to school in Pennsylvania, going to college at Lehigh University in Bethlehem.
Ah. Oh,
So
yeah.
so I was like taking the bus from Bethlehem to Manhattan for these auditions and not getting to class a lot, but and then doing some theater um, at the college as well.
Hmm.
And I I went up uh, for some music, a couple of musicals I was up for, and I came really close to getting Broadway shows. Made it like three callbacks on two of them or three of them,
Hmm.
but then it was after I most of the films and television were being done in L.A. at the time. In New York, there was soap operas, but there wasn't much, regular television and films. Once in a while, when something would shoot in New York,
Yeah.
but it was really out in L.A. And so I decided to go out there one summer after my junior year and just try to really make network and make some connections so that the following year after graduating, I, maybe could hit the ground running
Hmm.
was the idea. But what happened was I got out there and was able to get an agent pretty quick because of some of the people agents I worked with in New York. So they sent me out on some auditions, and I started booking some right pretty quickly. I did a guest role on Room 222. That was the first one. Then one on Emergency.
Yeah.
Most of where I played a guy who became paralyzed, and a Police Story where I played like a psychopath, a mad bomber. So it was more dramatic, which is what I was really more interested in at the time. But then, of course, it led to me being considered. I had to go through a bunch of auditions and screen tests for the pilot for Happy Days. And so then, once that happened and I was doing comedy, then it was tough. It became tough for me to be considered for dramatic roles
Yeah.
because they were seeing me in this comedic vein. But, I was really more interested in drama. And those were the things I got cast in initially.
Yeah. Yeah. And through the process of Happy Days and for the casting and everything, I believe it was Jerry Paris and Gary Marshall saw something in you that changed because Ralph Mouth was an entirely different character until you came along and they saw something within your personality that you brought out that they said, "Oh, no, we're gonna go with Don's idea here because he has a great wit and maybe we need to change Ralph Mouth a little bit."
Well, what happened was I was auditioning for Potsy, and Ralph was a very small character in the pilot, and Anson had done the role. Anson and Ron had done a pilot for Happy Days almost 2 years earlier, and
Yeah.
it didn't sell, and they put it off on one of the Love American styles, but then Grease was on Broadway, became a hit, and American Graffiti became a hit that summer. So that's when the ABC went back to Gary and said, "We're rethinking this. It might be good to do your show, but we want to do a new pilot." And they wanted to make it a little bit more like Graffiti because the other one was more like Summer of '42.
Okay.
And a little edgier in that regard. And so it was a whole new script. And they made Anson and Ron screen test because again, even though they had done the show, but they had to screen test because the network was worried that now they might be too old because it was almost 2 years later. But Gary was like, no, they're all right. Well, we'll screen test them, and along with a bunch of other hopeful actors. And that's when I got the call from my agent a few days after the screen test saying, "You didn't get the role, but some of the executives over there loved your screen test so much, they decided they want to make you a regular. And there's a small part in the pilot, a guy named Ralph, and they just said, he's kind of a jock, has a cool car, wisecracking guy, and that was about it." And so they offered me to do that role as opposed to the Potsy role that I auditioned for.
Mm-hmm.
And my agent and I decided we turned it down. What happened was I turned it down because, as I was talking earlier, I was more interested in drama. And I was up at the same time. I was up for a TV movie that it was a period piece, World War II, written by the guy who wrote Summer of '42, Herman Raucher, and it was being directed by the guy who directed Brian's song, Buzz Kulick. So it had great pedigree, and it was really good part, great script. And they told me that I had after that audition, I had a great chance of getting the role, but they wouldn't know for sure for about a week and a half. And so we turned down Happy Days on that Friday. Yeah. But then, as fate would have it, my agent at the time, Mark Harris, played basketball every Saturday at Gary Marshall's house. So at the game, in the middle of the game or during a break, he comes over to my agent, "Hey, what's with your boy? He's turning us down. What's going on here?" And he went on, proceeded to convince my agent that he thought I had a great chance of getting on the air, and that he said, "Okay, instead of guaranteeing him 7 out of 13 episodes, we'll guarantee him 10 out of 13. And instead of $750 an episode, we'll give him $1,000 an episode." So my agent called me on Monday and said, "I think we should reconsider this." And I had some actor friends that were saying, "What are you doing, turning down, the pilot?" Because Gary at the time had The Odd Couple on the air.
Yeah.
So I was starting to wonder, did I make a bad decision? And then decided, okay, I better, bird in hand kind of thing, and I should take it. And that's what happened. So then the character, once I got in there, and what happened was with Jerry, as you mentioned, Jerry Paris was a fantastic director. He directed the old Dick Van Dyke shows and played the next door neighbor. And he was brilliant, and Gary is brilliant. And so, but when I was working when I would come in with ideas that, that weren't necessarily in the script, and Jerry loved that, and he liked my ideas, and then he'd get an idea, and we kind of started doing things, and my character started growing, and the writers liked what they saw, and they started writing, getting ideas of what to do, and so it evolved. It
evolved. Yeah. Tommy, put that picture up there. That first one. I want to. There you go. Who are these young guys, Donnie?
That was the first picture we ever took together. Um, of course, that's Henry Winkler next to me
Hmm.
playing the Fonz, Anson Williams as Potsy, and Ron Howard as Richie. And that was the first, might have been the first day of shooting. Um,
Yeah.
we we were at it was like a drive-in in Burbank. I think it was called Arthur's, and that's where we shot it. And that was the first picture we took together. And I have that one hanging on my wall, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Winkler was only supposed to be on the show, like, if I remember this right, a little bit. He wasn't even supposed to be a regular. He was only supposed to be on there for a little bit, and wow, did he take off?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I don't. He kind of had the same kind of contract that I did the first year. I think, probably 10 out of 13, and and if you watch the first, 4 or 5 episodes, he didn't have a lot of dialogue, but he'd come in and with his body language and the way he personified this guy with a couple of words, very minimal, and but it was as cool. He was as cool as can be, and became captivated everybody. And then they started, building his character also
Yeah.
tremendously, and especially it really took off. But it wasn't like he was just going to do a few episodes and then be done. I think he was going to be in there
Oh,
the way I was supposed to be in there,
oh,
sort of peripheral character.
and
But
here's a question that I've asked a lot of actors when they've gone on a new series back in the day or currently. When did you guys know? When did it finally the bell went off and you went, okay, I think I can now not worry about paying the rent for a while. I think I can, I think we got a hit on our hands, and I think it's only going to grow from here. Was it after the first year or into the second year, or when
it's a
did you
good
hit?
it's a good question, because in the first year we were doing pretty well, but not big hit, but we were like in the top 20, and
Yeah.
so it was doing pretty well. Um, but then in the second season, the ratings started going down. At the time, all the hot comedy shows were in front of a live audience, like All in the Family and
Yeah.
Maude and Good Times, and so then when our ratings were going down, um, I thought it was Jerry's idea, but it could have been Gary's idea. I'm not sure. Jerry or Gary or both. They said, because I remember Jerry saying, "I think this is a perfect cast to do it in front of an audience, almost like shooting a play,
Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah.
because you had Tom Bosley, who had won the Tony for playing Fiorello on Broadway.
What
You
an
had
actor.
you had Henry, who by now his character was getting pretty big, but the show, the overall ratings were still not great. And then, but he'd gone to the Yale School of Drama and had done a lot of theater, and I had theater training, and we did some plays, and in college I did a bunch of plays, and Anson had done musical theater, so he just thought they thought we'd be a great cast, and it needed to be a little hotter. The show it just needed to
Yeah.
be a little, so that's when it happened. And then they decided that they were going to make, because Fonzie's character was getting so popular, they
Hmm.
said, what we have to do is came up with the idea of having him move into an apartment above the Cunningham's garage, and that way he could be in that, not only with some of the escapades that we're going through, but also with the family, so he's more integral. So,
Yeah.
and it was in that season where everything changed in a big way, and it just took off, and we became, like, by the end of the year we became number one, and we
Yeah.
stayed there for a while.
Right. Right. Tommy, show us picture number 2, please. One. There you go. There's the whole cast. And
Ah,
you want to talk about who was the Joker of all these guys? Who was the practical Joker?
oh, you mean like in real life?
Yeah, I mean, well, on the set and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
yeah,
they have some fun with you.
yeah, it wasn't me. even though that's the way my character would have been. But Jerry was probably the biggest practical joke, or our
Really?
director. But Henry and Ron sometimes, they would pull some fun little practical jokes on us. So I would say Henry and Ron out of the whole cast, and Jerry for sure more than anyone.
Did you know back then what we all know now about Ron Howard?
Well, I'll tell you a pretty good story about that. Ron came, I knew he wanted, we all became tight, really good friends. And Ron and I, we talked film a lot, because I was telling you how much I was getting into movies at that time. So we went to movies and we talked film. And then he came to me, I think it was in the 4th season. And he said, I want to make a little film. So like a calling card to show that I can direct. I mean, he'd
Right.
been in the business since he was 3.5. So he knew a lot. He went to USC for 1 semester, sometime around Happy Days. But he said, I already know everything that they're teaching. And so he didn't continue. But he wanted to make a film, an experimental film, independent, so that he could show, try to break in as a director. And he said, I have an idea and I want you to develop it with me and star in it. So he told me the idea and I said, I'm in, and so we developed it in an experimental way with improvisations, with a tape recorder, and using a lot of our improvs as a basis for the script, for the dialogue. Right. And then we cast to play opposite me an actress that I had introduced to the Happy Days world, was Linda Pearl, and then we wound up shooting on weekends because we were working all week, and on weekends we were shooting like 12, 14 hours a day, doing it, and Ron directing me. So he directed me before, I had that experience before he took off, and I knew that he'd be a great director. I mean, could I imagine that he'd become one of the top Hollywood directors, at the top of the heap? I don't know that I would have said, oh, I think he's going to be that, but I knew he had the ability, the talent, the experience, and so I wasn't surprised really. And I thought, it was great. It was great working with him in that capacity. And then he cast me later in one of his films, Ed TV. So it was great to work with him again.
Didn't you work with Anson on that one too?
No, Anson was not in Ed TV.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I did something with Anson years later, about 15 years ago, something called Take Two, and that was great. But no, Ron was not involved in that. But anyway, so I had that experience, and I definitely knew that he was a great director.
What was, I'm dying to ask you this, Don, so if you don't want to tell me, that's okay. What was the first big ticket item you bought when suddenly you went from $1,000 a week to a little bit more than that?
Yeah.
Was it a car, just putting money away in the bank? I mean, did you buy anything like,
Yeah, I think it was a series of cars. That was what I did, because when I was first got the show, I was driving a Volkswagen, a little Bug, and then so when we were making more money, doing that, not even more money, just from the fact that I was making the $1,000 a week, probably by the end of that first year, I bought a used Mercury Cougar convertible.
Ooh.
A Cougar convertible. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it was a great car. But then several years later, when we were making more, then I bought a Jensen Healey, and that was really fun car. Yeah. So it was the car for me, I guess. And then getting a nice, moving it to a nicer apartment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my first apartment was right off of Melrose on North Kings Road.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Well, no, actually, my first apartment was up on La Brea, right by the Magic Castle. That was my first apartment.
Oh. Oh,
and my roommate was an engineer at A&M Records, and I was working at the Beverly Center, working security at night, so I could audition during the day. And then, of course, when I was with the Groundlings, things changed a little bit then, and I was also emceeing at the Improv, so things kind of changed. You mentioned the word improv, which always has my ears perked up.
right.
How important is it nowadays or back then at all? Because I've always felt if you had a good, solid background, a foundation in improvisation, you were ahead of the guy next to you, maybe.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it also depends on the style that a particular production, how they're working. If they're allowing that to some degree,
Yeah.
or if they're sticking strictly to the book, the script, and not allowing for that. But I think I learned it in several, because then I went to, after the second acting school, I wound up going to a third one in LA. And in all of those, there were always periods where we did improvisation, not like we were trying to be necessarily funny, a comedian, but just to be able to improvise, and because it teaches you a lot. It does
Oh,
teach.
yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It teaches you so much. So I had done a bunch of that, and then when Ron said, I want to try doing the script where, you know what the scenes are. We have the outline. We know what each scene's about, but no dialogue is there yet. And just do improv. We'll record it, and then we had a writer who would take all of the tapes and then fashion the script from that. And so it was a great way to do a project. It was great. But you're right in terms of, if you have that ability, I think it teaches, all you do when you experience doing it, then it teaches you as an actor, you immediately kind of connect with the organic side of what improvisation is. And then you have to bring that to the game.
Yeah, yeah. Don Most is my guest here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. And I want to remind you that if you're going to be in the Denver area, or if you want to travel to Denver, on January 5th, he's going to be at Dazzles doing with the Metropolitan Jazz Orchestra, singing out some swing songs. And we're going to play some of his music here a little bit later on. You can go, oh, there it is, dazzlesdenver.com. Give them a look on their website. I'm sure there's tickets available. Go see Don. I like him. I like him. I never met him before, but I think I have a friend for life here. I really do. We're pretty much the same age. The reason I was talking about the improv is because when I went to the Groundlings, which, by the way, if it wasn't for Robin Williams, I would have never got there. I had auditioned several times, and then Robin one day saw me at the Improv. I was having lunch with Bud, and he looked at me and he said, "Why are you so down?" And he said, "Let me use your office." He went upstairs. He came down and he said, "Your audition was fine. They want you. Call this guy Monday and you're in." And I said, "Robin, did you have to?" He said, I didn't have to spend any money on this. Don't worry about it. You're in. Don't worry about it." And in my class was Bob Saget, Barbie Benton, Nick Daturo, Kevin Costner, and someone else I can't remember, and then little old me, know. And I was doing some Hill Street Blues at the time, and St. Nelson, doing the 5 and under stuff. I mean, I wasn't you when it came to acting, my friend. I wasn't going to win any Academy Awards that I was aware of.
But you were going after the comedy side then. I mean, that's
Yeah, I enjoy doing the impersonations, and I enjoy doing the comedy. I'd hope to do more in the voiceover world out there, but man, that is a tough racket. Had you gotten into, I'm sure you've done plenty of cartoon voiceover work over the years.
I have done some, but you're right. It's a very sort of cliquish and hard community to break into. I got into it. It was an easy path for what I did, because they did a cartoon of Happy Days. It was called Fonzie and the Happy Days Gang or something like that. And I did, I don't know, we might have done 2 seasons of that. But so that was my introduction. Then the producers, recommended me. They thought I was really good at that in this vein. So they recommended me to some other producers, and they were doing a show called it was Teen Wolf. So
Oh,
so then I did a different character on very different than what I was doing in Happy Days. Um,
right.
and that was 2 seasons. Then I got asked to do, my agent called me and says, the exec producer of a new cartoon, they want you. It was Dungeons and Dragons. And,
Ah,
and we did that also, only 2 seasons or three maybe. And that, now it's funny because now when I go to do personal appearances and some of these Comic Cons, so many people come up to me and want, talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I guess it's had a resurgence
yeah, yeah,
with the movie and all that. So,
yeah.
but those, then I did one other one, a CBS special, Hagar the Horrible. But I haven't done any in years. Nothing.
It's a tough racket. My nephew, who was the original voice of Aladdin, Scott Wanger, who was on Full House, and he, of course, he worked opposite Robin Williams. Occasionally, they were in the studio at the same time. He said to me, Uncle Gare, I don't get any calls anymore for. And he said, I was the original voice of Aladdin. I don't get any calls for it.
I
He
know
said,
it's weird.
if you're not a top $5-6 million actor, they don't want to know from you anymore because the animation is so expensive now in comparison to what it was back when you and I were knocking around Hollywood, which was, I'll tell you the truth. I miss Melrose where the Groundlings were, because across the street was a great little sub shop. And then there was also this place called The Last Wound Up. And we'd go in there and Costner would be winding up all these toys and playing with them and stuff like that. But he was something else. I could see in his eyes total success coming because people were, and of course, his biggest claim to fame then, Don, was The Dead Man and the Big Chill.
Oh, right. The Big Chill. Right.
That was the only thing that was his claim to fame. And then he went on to do, I have run into him when I lived in Las Vegas occasionally, and Saget ran into him. God rest Bob's soul. But from time to time, I want to show one picture. Tommy, bring that picture up of Don in the outfit, not the cowboy one, but the other one. Bring that one up, would you?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. What were you going for here, my friend? Were you going for Henry VIII?
It was an independent film that I went to Prague and out in the country from there and we shot in a castle.
Yeah.
And I was playing a king. It was like a 14th century or 15th century kind of piece. And it was an amazing castle. And the costumes were great. And so that was a fun role. Very different. And I had a blast doing that.
Yeah. When I saw that, I thought he's going for Henry VIII.
There's another picture of me where I'm sitting in the big throne, and I wish you had that one. But anyway,
I couldn't. I only could find what I could find.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one other picture here. Bring out the Western one, because I know that you did a Western not long ago.
Yeah. This was called Far Haven. It just came out like a year ago or something like that. It's streaming on Amazon and some others, I think.
Right.
It was my first Western, and I loved it. It was great. We shot this in Arizona at this lot, where they had the outdoor, the exterior, the streets with all the saloons, the shops, and all that, and nothing around but mountains and cactus. So it was great location. Really good cast, and I played. It was again, it was not a comedic part. It was sort of a guy who was a bit of a troublemaker, and so I really enjoyed it. And in the last 6 years, I've done more films than I had in probably the 15 years before, and all different roles, which is, this is what I always wanted to do, play a variety. And I went from, playing a pastor, a local pastor, to a polygamist, literally one after the other, and then a king, and then a career criminal, and a prison guard and an attorney, and in the Western. And the next one coming out is really intense role, based on a true story. It's called Harson's Island Revenge. Back in true story in Michigan in the 1920s during Prohibition, with all the bootlegging going on.
Yeah.
And there was a mob, a gang that was really controlling it. And they were vicious, murderous type gang. And I play the head. It was a Jewish mob, and I play the head of
A
the
Jewish mob.
Yeah.
Such a deal, Don Most.
They were called the Purple Gang. And you look it up, and I wish you had some pictures. I should have sent you some pictures of me in that. It's a completely different thing. And and I'm hearing really great things about it. They're going to have a theatrical release. It's going to go out, I think, probably in the spring, have a theatrical release, and then stream sometime in the summer. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out.
How has casting been for you right after Happy Days and right now? And how has the casting system changed? I guess is what I'm kind of getting to in comparison to when you and I were young men living in LA. How has it changed? Because back then agents had some power. Agents would find you the work. Nowadays, I'm hearing from actors, I find the work and tell my agent.
Yeah, that happens. That's happened with me. The casting process, I think agents had a little bit more maybe influence back then, especially if you were with a big agency, the William Morris, CAA, and ICM. And if you were with them, then it was a little bit definitely easier than, say, with the smaller agencies. But how it's the biggest thing that's changed, I think even more so than the actor having to find the work and then letting the agent handle the deal or something, which definitely happens now. But you used to go in person to audition, and you would audition for the casting director or the producers and a director, so that then there'd be interaction, and if they're looking for a certain thing, a certain quality or some sort of characteristic that they might say to you, hey, that was a good reading, but can you make this adjustment, and can you do this? And then if you take direction well and you did it, and then maybe you get the part. Now I haven't done an in-person audition in like 7, 8, 9 years or something like that. It's all you self-tape it. You get somebody to read, off camera to read with you, and you do it. But now you're not getting the chance to have any feedback or direction. To you just have to take a shot at, make a choice, and hope that it's in the right area. But it's tough. It's really crazy.
Yeah, and it's like what I was told when I first got out there. After a while, they said, look, producers are going to cast the people they can trust, because money is time and time is money. And, once you're in front of them enough, then maybe they'll start giving you little parts here, little parts there, and you're working your way into it. I want to go back to Happy Days, because it was on one of those shows that you met Mrs. Most.
Yes.
Morgan. Can we please have that picture up, Tommy? There she is.
Yeah.
And did you know right away?
Well, I knew right away that I wanted to, start a relationship, to start dating her for sure. She came on as a guest, on our show. It happened to be the last season that I did the show. It was the 7th season, because after that, Ron and I decided not to renew our contracts. So it's a good thing she got there before I left. But we met during the week of rehearsal, during rehearsal during the week, and we got along. We were talking very easily. I mean, she was really beautiful, but then we
Yes.
also had a nice rapport when we were talking. And then I asked her out before the show to go to dinner before we would shoot the show instead of going to the commissary. So right there at Nicodell's on Melrose,
Oh, yes.
right outside Paramount. So we went to Nicodell's for dinner, and I knew that we were gonna, did I say, "Oh, I'm gonna marry you"? You have to remember at the time I was 20, 27, something like that, and the show was really hot, still big, and I wasn't wanting to give up being single at the time. I was, wanting to
Yeah.
continue, sort of
Enjoy the fruits of your labor.
yeah, there you go. There you go. So, but I finally wised up, and we dated, and then 2 years later we got married.
Oh,
And
and I saw some pictures from the wedding and the different people that were there. And I didn't get married till I was 33, and I met Grace. She's no longer my wife. I mean, she's no longer with us, period. But we were divorced before she passed away. But she met me the way Jay Leno met Mavis, his wife. She was heckling me on stage at the Improv. She literally was heckling me on stage. I was emceeing that night. And
that's funny.
who was I bringing up? Oh, I was bringing up Johnny Dark. He'd come from the comic strip, not the comic strip, but the Comedy Store, and he came down. And Bud said, "You want to do one of our comics is left, and Gary's not feeling well. So do you want to do? Yeah, okay, I'll go in." And so she's heckling me, and Johnny, as I'm walking off the side, Johnny comes up and says, "Jesus, that girl's really bad." I said, "Yeah, no kidding." So I went into the front because I was done, and Bud would always close the show. And I was sitting there having a beer, getting ready to go home and kind of relax and just kind of get over. I was starting to come down with a cold. This girl sends me a beer, and she came on to me. I don't know why, not with this face. I can't figure it out to this very day. And anyway, we were married for 9.5 years. She was supposed to move back home. She worked for J. Walter Thompson. She was a casting person for a lot of their commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't audition for any of that stuff because it would be a conflict of interest. But
right.
but she was brilliant. But yeah, I met Gracie in show business in a sense.
Yeah.
But she's gone now, and she was brilliant. She was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well,
so sorry.
it happens. You know what I want to do now? I want to talk a little bit about, you have a couple of CDs out, do you not?
Yeah.
Mostly swinging. I want to play that. I want to play that song that we have, which is New York High. Let's listen to 1 minute of that, Tommy, please. I want people to get an idea of this gentleman's voice.
Is getting me high. Girls by the Store Club have been catching my eye. Moonbeams dance on a Waldorf hotel. Could it be I've fallen under a New York spell? Downtown Manhattan's like a shower of stars shining.
Anyway, I love your voice. I mean, I've worked with Michael Bublé, and according to one review here from what is this? This is out of the Huffington Post. What a voice! What energy! Who knew? Move over, Michael Bublé.
Right. Yeah, it's so great to get that kind of affirmation, if you will. Because it was in my blood so much from doing it when I was 13, 14, 15. Yeah. So it was, I have such love and passion for that style of music. I love I also love classic rock and things like that. But in terms of performing, the great American songbook, the standards, and with a real jazz kind of approach to them, it's such a high for me. And I'm just so thrilled and feel so grateful that I could be doing this now, and that people are responding to it the way they are, which is just
Yeah.
it's just it's hard to describe. So I'm going to keep doing it. But yeah, that New York High was from the most recent CD called New York High is the name of the CD. Mostly
Mhm.
swinging. I did about 5 years ago, and in
Yeah.
LA with a great big band. And in this New York High I did in Nashville. We actually recorded
Oh,
Nashville because this producer Tony Manter's there, and long story, but we wound up doing it there,
yeah.
and not a big band, but still I did a lot of standards, jazz standards, and a
Right.
couple of songs that were not from that genre. Like I did one that Smokey Robinson made famous, "Ooh Baby Baby," and
Yeah.
that's on the CD. So we try to branch out a little bit and play around with some stuff, and it came out really well.
You
So
can catch Don on January 5th in Denver at Dazzles. Give them a call and check them out online. Dazzles, I believe it's
it's
dazzlesdenver.com.
yeah, it's not plural. It's just not plural. It's just Dazzle.
Oh, Dazzle. Okay. Dazzledenver.com. Sorry about that.
There you
Check it
go.
out January 5th. He's going to be there performing, and I know you're going to want to hear more from this gentleman altogether. We've got about 5 minutes left of the program. Don, question that I ask some of my guests, and some of them I don't,
Yeah.
but when you're by yourself or you're with your wife, you're driving along or you're home or you're thinking about things, who is Don most inside?
Oh, God, I don't know if I can speak for myself about that. I don't know. I've never been asked that question. Um,
Well, that's why you're doing my show.
yeah. Well, I'm just a guy from Brooklyn that grew up in a very sort of normal way, and I think I've maintained a lot of the same values and sensibilities that I acquired growing up that way, with family being real important. My grandparents lived about a mile away, and we have Sunday dinner with them every Sunday, and
Wow.
every some other relatives in Brooklyn and
Mhm.
New York, and my friends, friends in the building. I grew up we had right next door to me, who's still my oldest friend from the time we were 2 years old. I was 1 year old and he was born. We were friends, and my other friend lived on the other side of the building, and playing ball in the streets.
Mhm.
Stick ball, punch ball, and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of that I think has stayed with me, and I had good mentors like Jerry Paris and examples like Ron Howard. So to keep us grounded, to keep me grounded when could have gone sort of off the
Yeah.
off the deep end, when that kind of fame and all that. And so try to maintain that. And I think I'm still basically that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I made a good friend today, and I
Well,
thank
thank
you so very much for joining us here on Main Street. Don Most, who is an entertaining gentleman, actor, singer, producer. We didn't even get into your directing. We didn't get into your theater.
you. Yeah.
What we would,
Another time, I guess.
yeah, we'll do this another time. There's so much to dive into because you've
Yeah.
had such a wonderful and vast career, and I know that things are going to be even greater for you. And we're going to clock out here, but Don, stay right there. Don't go anywhere. Right after the show, we'll talk.
All
And
right.
I just want to say thank you to all of you out there for joining us on Main Street. Don Most was my guest. Next week, Stephanie Powers will be on the program. So I'm looking forward to that. Until we see each other next time, will you take care of yourselves and take care of each other? And God bless. Okay, Don, did you enjoy?